The twin moons of Velkara cast pale silver light across the ancient stone platform where Lenari knelt, her violet skin gleaming with the ceremonial oils that marked her as the chosen one. The delicate bioluminescent patterns along her arms pulsed faintly with her racing heartbeat, betraying the fear she worked so hard to conceal behind her serene expression. Around her, the elders of her village chanted in the old tongue, their voices rising and falling like waves against distant shores. Lenari had known this day would come since childhood. Every generation, when the harvest moons aligned, one was chosen to appease the beast of the thornwood, the ancient creature that dwelled in the forest depths and whose anger could devastate their settlements. She had accepted her fate with the grace expected of her people, the Velkan. Their culture valued sacrifice, duty, and the continuation of their species above individual lives. But as the chains were fastened around her wrists and the elders retreated toward the safety of the village walls, Lenari felt her composure cracking like ice under pressure. The beast's roar echoed through the forest, a sound that seemed to vibrate in her very bones. Trees shuddered, and nightbirds scattered from their roosts in panic. Lenari closed her eyes, whispering prayers to ancestors she hoped were listening. Then came a sound that didn't belong, a sharp crack that split the air like thunder. The chains at her wrists fell away, severed cleanly. Lenari's eyes snapped open to see a figure she had only heard about in whispered tales. A human. Ethan Ward stood before her, plasma cutter still humming in his hand, his environmental suit marked with the insignia of the Terran Exploration Corps. His brown eyes met hers with an intensity that made her breath catch, not from fear, but from something else entirely. "Come with me if you want to live," he said in surprisingly fluent Velkan, extending his hand toward her. Another roar split the night, closer now. The beast was coming. Lenari hesitated only a moment before placing her hand in his. His grip was warm, strong, and somehow reassuring despite the fact that humans were supposed to be barbaric, warlike creatures according to everything her people taught. Ethan pulled her from the platform and they ran. Behind them, the beast emerged from the tree line, a massive six-legged creature covered in obsidian scales, its 3 rows of teeth gleaming in the moonlight. It was larger than Lenari remembered from the old recordings, its eyes burning with ancient hunger. "Your people feed this thing?" Ethan shouted as they dodged between massive tree trunks. "It's tradition," Lenari gasped, struggling to keep pace with his longer strides. "To keep our villages safe." "That's not tradition, that's extortion," Ethan replied, his voice hard. He tapped a control on his wrist and suddenly a shimmering barrier materialized behind them. The beast slammed into it with enough force to shake the ground, but the energy field held. They didn't stop running until they reached a small clearing where a sleek shuttle waited, its hull reflecting the moonlight. Ethan helped Lenari aboard, his hands gentle despite their urgency. Once inside, Lenari finally found her voice. "Why did you save me?" "Your people don't involve themselves in indigenous affairs. It's your prime directive." Ethan smiled as he initiated the shuttle's launch sequence. "I've been studying your world for 3 months. When I learned about the sacrifices, I couldn't stand by and watch." He glanced at her, his expression softening. "The prime directive says we can't interfere with natural cultural development. But there's nothing natural about being forced to feed sentient beings to a predator out of superstition." The shuttle lifted off, and through the viewport, Lenari watched her village growing smaller below. She should have felt grief, loss, the weight of abandoning her people. Instead, she felt liberated, as though chains far heavier than the ceremonial ones had been broken. "What will happen to my people?" she asked quietly. "The beast will be angry." Ethan's jaw set with determination. "I've contacted the Terran Council. They're sending a xenobiology team and peacekeepers. We're going to relocate the beast to an uninhabited continent where it can't threaten anyone. And we're going to teach your people that they don't have to live in fear anymore." Over the following weeks aboard the orbital research station, Lenari learned about the wider galaxy that her isolated people had been sheltered from. She learned that humans, far from being the violent barbarians of legend, were actually known throughout the galactic community for their stubborn refusal to accept injustice, their tendency to protect the vulnerable even at great cost to themselves. She also learned about Ethan, how he had lost sleep studying her culture, how he had violated protocols to save her, how his superiors had initially reprimanded him before the full details emerged, and he was commended instead. She learned that his compassion wasn't weakness but a different kind of strength, one her people had forgotten in their rigid adherence to tradition. One evening, as they stood before the observation window watching Velkara rotate below, Ethan spoke softly. The council approved first contact protocols. Your people will be offered membership in the galactic community. No more sacrifices. No more beast. Lenari felt tears gathering in her eyes, the bioluminescent patterns on her skin pulsing with emotion. You changed everything. For me. For all of us. Ethan turned to her, and in his eyes she saw reflected the same feelings that had been growing in her heart since that night on the platform. I couldn't let you die, he said simply. And now I can't imagine the galaxy without you in it. She reached for his hand, marveling at how natural it felt, how right. Her people had taught her that outsiders were dangerous, that tradition was sacred, that individual lives mattered less than collective safety. But Ethan had shown her a different truth, that compassion transcends species, that courage means standing against injustice, and that sometimes the greatest strength lies in refusing to accept that things must remain as they've always been. Thank you, Lenari whispered, for showing me that there's more to life than waiting to be sacrificed. Ethan squeezed her hand gently. Thank you for trusting a stranger who broke all the rules to keep you alive. Below them, Velkara continued its eternal rotation, but its future had been irrevocably changed by one human who refused to look away, and one alien girl who found the courage to reach for an outstretched hand. Their story would be told for generations, a reminder that sometimes the greatest revolutions begin with a single act of defiance against cruelty, and that hearts can bridge any distance, even between stars.